Hi, and welcome back to the K Word. I'm so pleased that you can join me. Today, it's all about the residence permit that you need here in the UAE to call yourself a resident. Hi, and welcome back to the K Word. I'm Kimberly, and remember, I'm a teacher here in the United Arab Emirates, and I've been teaching in Abu Dhabi for the last 3 years. What you can see out there is what we call affectionately the pineapple buildings, because they actually look like the skin of a pineapple. The tricky part with those buildings is that when the sun hits a certain side of them, their shutters open and close, hence the reason why they get their name. So when people ask me where I live, I say to them, not far from the pineapple buildings, and everybody goes, got ya. What I thought I'd talk to you about today is what's it like and how do we go about it once we've got our residence visa and the sorts of things that we can and can't do to when it's been issued. So a little bit of information first. I thought I'd share with you the view where you can see the pineapple buildings, but also the other problem that we have here in the United Arab Emirates. Our windows are double glazed because currently out there it's definitely over 40 degrees. It's an ambient like 23.5 in here because my AC's on. Can't live without my AC. So the outside windows are dirty, and that's because the building hasn't arranged, or the facilities management people haven't quite arranged to get the windows cleaned yet. While I've been in the building in the last year, they've been cleaned twice. Normally a building will do them 3 or 4 times a year. It just depends on your facility management. So these ones got dirty straight after they'd been cleaned because of the rain that we actually do get here in the United Arab Emirates. Now, if you're really keen to find out about rain in the United Arab Emirates, I'm going to drop a link in the description on this video about cloud seeding. It's no use going into it now. If you're really interested, there's a brilliant video on YouTube, and I'll link to it, about cloud seeding, and it tells you about the rain that we get here. What I can tell you is that the rain is full of sand. So of course when it rains, the sand not only comes out of the atmosphere, but sticks to your windows. So that's a little bit about that. So today we're going to have a look at a residence visa. So first step, normally you'd be issued an entry permit, and in that entry permit is a piece of paper or an indication on the computer that you're actually allowed to enter the UAE on a work permit rather than just on a tourist visa. They've been issuing those, and I know for a fact that there are people currently here in the United Arab Emirates who are getting ready to start teaching. Now, if you're here in Abu Dhabi, I'm not sure about the other Emirates, so I can't claim to know about that. But here in Abu Dhabi, you have to be quarantined for 2 weeks before you're allowed back in the classroom. So most schools start back on the 23rd. Okay, now remember, a working week here in the United Arab Emirates is Sunday to Thursday, so we definitely have Friday and Saturday for the weekend. All right, so you've been issued that special piece of paper, you're allowed to come in, and then your employer will actually work out with you the next couple of steps. So that piece of paper gets stamped, or there's a notification that comes through with immigration. A lot of it's getting computerized now. So the moment you enter the country, each company has what we call a PRO, and that PRO will be notified that you've actually landed. So once that happens, they'll then start processing your visa. So a work permit can take a few days, it can take a couple of weeks. It's completely dependent. So my last visa took, I think it was about 2 weeks that it took. Now, every time a visa is issued, you actually have to go and do a medical. So here they go in, they take a chest x-ray and they take some blood. Simple. So we know that they're testing here for hepatitis B, and they're also testing for HIV. And the other thing that they'll do your chest x-ray for is tuberculosis. So those are the 3 key things that they're screening. Once your medical has been done, and they're done in a government facility, okay? So you'll go in probably a group with some employees, or if you're here by yourself, they'll either take you there and put you through. So there is a fast track. You can pay to be fast tracked. That's the best part about this country. You can VIP yourself for a bit of money. Once that medical's done, depending on your company. Now, I've worked for 2 schools where I needed to pay for the next imperative piece of equipment that we have to have here, and that's our national identity card. So we all have a national identity card that is microchipped and it goes everywhere with us. Now, currently on our cards are our photos and all of our personal detail. Our employer or our sponsor is actually loaded onto these cards, and our health insurance details, okay? Generally, they'll have either a nice or a yucky photo, depends on how long you've been here. My Emirates identity number has been mine since I landed in 2013. It's very unique to me, and it's been following me. So for each employer that I go to, all they're doing is renewing or updating the information on my sponsor. This happens. So I've paid for my Emirates ID card in 2 schools, and 1 school was brilliant enough to pay for everything. So that was really, really good. So take a break. I'm going to give you a little bit more information that's going to come through on some slides, and then we'll be back to talk things like banks and phones and things like that, because they're really important to our lives. Hold up. I was putting my video together and realized that I had missed a very crucial part out of getting your Emirates ID issued. And this is only because I did it so long ago. So there's something called biometrics, and they're going to put your fingerprints, your palm print, this part, all of those biometrics are going to be loaded onto your account on your Emirates ID. You have to go and do the biometrics sort of in line with getting a medical. So, oops, pleased I found it, went back and fixed it. Hence the reason why the change in clothes. So, hang in with me. Okay, so by now you would have done your medical and they would have put you in your accommodation, or you would have found it. Each contractor has specific things in it. So either it's company provided housing, or they give you what we call an accommodation allowance, and that means you can actually go out and rent your own apartment. That's another whole other issue. But what you would need to do is you would need to give them your passport. Because into your passport, although I think they're changing the system, they are going to put one of these magic little stickers. I'm just going to cover up, this is one of my expired ones. I'm just going to cover up some important details and stuff in there. And it goes in your passport, and that gives you the right to call yourself a resident. Now, until that sticker goes into your passport, there's a few things that you can and can't do. While you're under process, you can approach a bank. There are numerous banks here that you can actually approach. One of the things that they're actually going to need is a salary certificate. Now, this is something that your employer provides for you, and what it does is it clearly states who your employer is, basically your sponsor. This is how much money you'll be getting a month, and that will go to the bank. And then the bank will open your account depending on what you want. Okay, now some of the accounts are linked where you can send them around the world. So the likes of HSBC and all of those big ones, you'll probably find a lot of those big ones here. The other thing that you might want to get involved with is the little sticker that's on the front of my passport. And this is eGate. So for me, when I come back from overseas, when we were allowed to travel, I could actually put my passport or my Emirates ID into the machines in the airport and pass through. I don't actually have to have stamps, which as New Zealand is a bit of a downside, because then you can't collect stamps or of where you've been, which is kind of a disappointment for us. The next thing, or probably the thing that you did when you came through the airport, is you probably would have picked up a tourist SIM. So here in the United Arab Emirates, we have 3 key telecommunications providers. One is kind of newish to the market. They've been around a couple of years, but the other 2 have been long standing. You can do all the same things that you can do in your country. You can have prepaid, you can have postpaid. And then one of the companies at the moment is offering, if you pay a year up in front, right at the beginning, then you get some really good rates. So you're going to have to shop around and find out what fits for you. Okay, currently I'm on a postpaid. I'm looking to stop that shortly before I actually leave and hit my flight. So that's going to be my key thing. Depending on your employers, they may have already sorted internet and things like that out. Normally, you would actually have to wait for that precious little sticker to go into your book in your passport before you can go and sort those sorts of things out. A tourist visa is valid for 7 days. You can actually, or 7 to 14 days, you can actually extend it and keep topping it up until your visa is through. So, banks, mobiles. One of the key things that I think needs to be said in here is that if you're going with the accommodation allowance and you're going to go and find your apartment, this is probably one of the key things that you want to know about. Here, they still believe in checkbooks, would you believe it? I know for me, as a New Zealander, checkbooks are long gone. There are some fierce penalties here for bouncing a check. It's really not something that you really want to have a go at, but our accommodation is paid by checks. Depending on the apartment or villa, if you're lucky enough to have the salary for that, you're going to either need to pay in 3, 4, 2, or 12 checks. Depends on what you want to do, or one. So normally a landlord will ask for the rent either 1 check, which is the entire year, 2 checks split into 6 months, 3 checks, of course, for every 4 months, and then 4 checks every 3 months. Now, there are some, because of the current situation out there, that will actually allow you to pay monthly. So those ones are kind of new-ish. Okay, so you want to be looking around and finding where you want to live. Now, there's plenty of places to live, and there's some gorgeous apartments out there. You'll have to pay for them, but it's depending on what you want to do. If you're here to save money, I'd be soaking up the employer's accommodation. I've been on an accommodation allowance. I've had to top up a little bit in order to get a place by myself. It's just because I'm fussy. Okay, so there's all the information you need to know about what it's like to get that magic card, to have that brilliant sticker, and to be able to start living your life as a resident here in the United Arab Emirates. Coming up next, in my next episode, which will be episode 3, I'm going to let you know some of the tricks that I used when I was teaching online here to my class for 15 weeks. So stay tuned for the next episode.